There's been no other scientist in the world whose name is so indissolubly linked with Einstein in all the textbooks of physics. Still, many do not know much about the man or his personality. Satyendra was born on January 1 of 1894 to a middle-class Bengali family in Calcutta. He was the eldest of 7 children with 6 sisters after him. At an early age, Bose showed an aptitude for learning and a thirst for knowledge. Satyendra Nath, who happened to be an accountant by profession, encouraged his son's mathematical skills. Each morning he would leave arithmetic problems scribbled on the veranda floor, and a young Bose would sit and do his sums and proudly show his father when he returned. When he was 13, Satyendra began attending the illustrious Hindu school in central Kolkata. Bose was quickly recognized as an outstanding pupil, especially in mathematics and the sciences. He was fortunate to have had brilliant teachers and class fellows. Like any other student, Satyendra was anxious taking his matriculation exam, but he still passed with flying colors, standing 5th in the order of merit. The year was 1909, and a 15-year-old Bose had decided to join the Presidency College for an intermediate science course. Meanwhile, in the West, Albert Einstein had become a much celebrated scientist thanks to the success of special relativity of 1905. While at Presidency College, Satyendra came under the guidance of teachers like Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose and Sir Prafulla Chandra Ray. A 17-year-old Bose thrived his intermediate examination and then chose applied mathematics for a Bachelor of Science degree. He graduated 2 years later in 1913 at the top of his class. 1 year later, at age 20, a newly graduate Satyendra was married to Usha Bati Ghosh, the 11-year-old daughter of a prominent Calcutta physician. This was before the passing of Child Marriage Restraint Act, which had fixed the age of marriage for girls at 18 years and boys at 21 years. The marriage had been arranged by Bose's mother, Amodini Rai Chaudhuri. Bose would rather have married later but went along with his mother's wishes. He refused to accept a dowry for his marriage in a time when it was commonly practiced, and afterward set about to teach English to Usha. Bose continued his education as well by enrolling for a master's degree in applied mathematics at University of Calcutta. In the year 1915, at age 21, he not only graduated at the top of his class but also created a record in the history of the university by securing 92% marks. Meanwhile, in the West, World War I had begun, and Albert Einstein had successfully published his theory of general relativity. Any modern scholar at this stage in their career would enroll for a PhD degree. This would be a straightforward process, but Bose was rather interested in teaching. And so, from 1916 to 1921, he worked as a lecturer in the physics department of the University of Calcutta. During this time, Bose came across the newly published theory of general relativity, and he was instantly fascinated by it. So much so that along with colleague and friend Meghnad Saha, Bose went on to translate Einstein's scientific papers from German to English and published them in a book. As a polyglot, Bose was well versed in several languages such as Bengali, English, French, German, and Sanskrit. The year was 1921. Albert Einstein was given the prestigious Nobel Prize for his services to theoretical physics and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect, a pivotal step in the development of quantum theory. The same year, Satyendra left his beloved Calcutta and took up a position at Dhaka University in present-day Bangladesh. There he was a reader for the physics department. In a letter written to his friend Meghnad Saha, Bose described the situation at the university. It has been well over a month since I moved to your part of the country. Work has not yet started. Your Dhaka college had quite a few things, but due to utter neglect, they are in a bad way. We do suffer from lack of journals here, but the authorities of the new university have promised to place order for some of them along with their back numbers. Talk is also going on about having a separate science library. Bose helped in setting up whole new departments at the university, including laboratories for teaching advanced courses to undergraduate and postgraduate students of physics and chemistry. And as reader, he gave lectures on thermodynamics and classical electromagnetism. During one such lecture, Bose felt dissatisfied with the existing derivations of Planck's radiation law. After much thought and several discussions with Saha, Bose came up with a paper deriving the same result without the use of classical physics as Planck himself had done. This was a breakthrough. Bose's derivation was rejected at first because of course it was a radical new idea which not just anyone could accept. A proposal that aims to supersede the existing norms is often met with criticism. Bose was not disheartened though, as he sent the paper directly to Albert Einstein in Germany, writing, "Respected Sir, I have ventured to send you the accompanying article for your perusal and opinion. I am anxious to know what you think about it. If you think the paper worth publication, I shall be grateful if you arrange for its publication in Zeitschrift für Physik. Though a complete stranger to you, I do not feel any hesitation in making such a request, because we are all your pupils, though profiting only by your teachings through your writings." In a way, Bose helped revive Einstein's falling scientific career. This was the mid-1920s, and Einstein was deeply involved in opposing the ongoing quantum revolution, despite him having pioneered it. Bose's letter came like a breath of fresh air, catching the attention of the great scientist. Einstein was quick enough to recognize the importance of this new result. He translated Bose's paper, titled Planck's Law and Hypothesis of Light Quanta, into German and had it published in Zeitschrift für Physik under Bose's name in 1924. When Einstein met Bose face to face, he asked him whether he had been aware that he had invented a new type of statistics. Bose very candidly said, "No." Bose's interpretation is now called Bose-Einstein statistics. But this was just the beginning of Bose-Einstein partnership. Einstein was greatly impressed that a certain young man from India had reached out to him for the sake of scientific progress. He wrote to Bose, "Your paper is an important step forward and I liked it very much." The more Einstein thought about Bose's paper, the more he was influenced by it. The reason Bose's interpretation produced accurate results was that since photons are indistinguishable particles, one cannot treat any two photons having equal energy as being two different photons. Understanding this is pretty easy. Consider the situation when you have to toss two distinguishable and unbiased coins at the same time. Then there may come one of the four possible outcomes as shown. In this way, the probability of getting, say, two heads is a mere 1/4, which is of course obvious. But suppose that the two coins become indistinguishable from one another. That is, by looking at them you cannot tell the difference. Then there will be three possible outcomes only: two heads, or two tails, or one of each. Now the chance of getting two heads is increased to 1/3. This means that in the world of Bose statistics, the likelihood of events happening is quite different from our everyday expectations. Einstein had started to realize just how radical this proposition was. In fact, Bose himself had not been aware of the potential of his idea. Einstein adopted Bose's idea and extended it to atoms. This led him to predict the existence of phenomena which we now call Bose-Einstein condensate. Bose's work had earned him an invitation to collaborate with the greatest minds of the time in Europe. Bose applied for a 2-year leave from the Dhaka University to enable him to go to Europe. He was permitted only after he could show Einstein's appreciative postcard to the Vice-Chancellor of the university. After arriving in Paris, Bose wrote to Einstein, "I have been granted leave by my university for 2 years. I have arrived just a week ago in Paris. I do not know whether it will be possible for me to work under you in Germany. I shall be glad, however, if you will grant me the permission to work under you, for it will mean for me the realization of a long-cherished dream." Bose waited eagerly for the great scientist to respond. In the meanwhile, he was fortunate to have helped the legendary Marie Curie in her lab work. Bose made certain difficult measurements of the piezoelectric effect. Bose also met Maurice de Broglie later, who introduced him to X-ray diffraction and spectroscopy. And then Einstein's reply came in. "Thank you sincerely for your letter. I am glad that I shall have the opportunity soon of making your personal acquaintance." Bose proceeded to Berlin. He was anxious to meet Einstein. Even though he did not get the opportunity to work with Einstein, his meeting with him was quite profitable. Einstein wrote a letter of recommendation for Bose, which enabled him to meet some of the best German scientists, including Fritz Haber, Lise Meitner, and Max Born. After his stay in Europe, Bose returned to Dhaka in 1926. He was 32 years old. Bose did not have a doctorate, and as a result of that, he would not be qualified for the post of professor he had applied for. But again, Einstein's letter of recommendation was much help. Bose was then declared head of the Department of Physics at University of Dacca. Whatever Bose had learned in Europe, he had successfully applied it in Dhaka. Bose designed equipment himself for an X-ray crystallography laboratory. He also set up laboratories and libraries to make the department a center of research in unified field theories. Bose continued to teach at the Dhaka University until 1945. When the partition of India became imminent, Bose returned to Calcutta. He was depressed by the division of India and Pakistan and felt it to be a wound in the heart of his beloved nation. Bose found it very difficult to focus on the sciences in the middle of this social imbalance. He decided to stay in Calcutta and taught there until retirement.